Uh, Friends, I'm happy to again introduce Maledri Garu. He's a constitutional expert and jurist, and he has an experience of 25 years in the field of judicial administration as district judge. And he was kind enough to deliver about 3 lectures during the last 3 weeks on the constitutional importance. Today, he will be dealing about the fundamental rights and its importance. I request Maledri Saab to kindly deliver the lecture.
My pleasant good evening to all the sirs, especially Sri Padmanabh Rao Garu and his daughter and others, and best wishes to all the students. I am privileged to speak to you today the importance of fundamental rights and also about the directive principles of state policy. And as I discussed with Padmanabh Rao Garu, I will conclude somehow today the topic of fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy and amendment of constitution, and also another subject that is landmark judgments of the Supreme Court in short. If time permits, next time again I will speak more about landmark judgments of the Supreme Court and the future of the India and judiciary and constitution and several other aspects which are really connected to each other and very important, especially to the students who are preparing for IAS exam. We have discussed in the previous 2 lectures regarding how and when and under what circumstances our Constitution of India was framed. We must remember in our mind the freedom of our country is not came just like that. Several people sacrificed their lives and they fought for freedom of speech and expression, equality and other things. So they have prepared the Constitution of India keeping in mind what they were not having, so as to see that every citizen of this country and every human being for that matter will have all that what they require for the development of themselves and the country and the world at large. That's why if you look at the preamble of the Constitution, you will understand that they want to have sovereign democratic republic. After the amendment, they also added secular and socialist words also to the preamble of the Constitution. You know very well that after adopting the objective resolution passed on 13th December 1946, on 22nd January 1947, the objective resolution has come into force, and then on 15th August 1947, we have achieved independence. Then you know that under the chairmanship of Sri Ambedkar Garu, we have adopted in Constitutional Assembly the Constitution. See, we have sources of power, governmental sources of power, that is the executive, legislative and judicial branches of the government receives their power from the Constitution and bound by it with the aids of its Constitution. India is governed by a parliamentary system of government with executive directly accountable to legislature. So under Articles 52 and 53, the President of India is head of the executive branch, and Article 60, the duty of preserving, protecting and defending the Constitution and the law. Under Article 74, head of the Council of Ministers, which aids and advises the President in the performance of their constitutional duties. Under Article, the Council of Ministers is answerable to the lower house. So our constitution is federal in nature and unitary in spirit. We have several features for our constitution, and we have Article 368, which says about the power of the legislature and amendments, etc. We will discuss about how the amendment can take place, to what extent the amendment can be done, all these aspects in due course of time. In the meanwhile, we have to see what are the fundamental rights. Our fundamental rights are there in chapter number part 3 of the chapter 3 of Indian Constitution. The fundamental rights are from articles 12 to 35. Articles 12 to 35. What are these articles 12 to 35? And how we are entitled to implement it, and how, if they are violated, then what are the remedies available and all that. The fundamental rights are the basic human rights enshrined in the Constitution of India, which are guaranteed to all its citizens. Fundamental rights are there given to citizens, but not for non-citizens. So other foreigners, they are having human rights. Citizens are having fundamental rights. They are applied without discrimination on the basis of race, religion, caste, gender, etc. significantly. And they are enforceable in courts. They are enforceable in courts. We can put a question to us about why we are calling them as fundamental rights, and also consider the difference between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy, and also about the difference between fundamental rights and constitutional rights and other legal rights. Don't think that we are having only fundamental rights. We are having fundamental rights, human rights, constitutional rights, legal rights, and all other rights which a person for the development of himself, though not codified in terms of law, are also there to fundamental, to a citizen of this country. These rights are called fundamental rights because of two reasons. The most important two reasons are, one is they are enshrined in the Constitution, which guarantees them, because they are kept as fundamental rights in the Constitution by giving a separate chapter for it. Then they are justiciable, enforceable by courts. They are justiciable. It means that you can implement it, you implement your rights by enforcing, by resorting to courts. In case of violation, a person can approach the appropriate court, and for that matter, for implementation of the fundamental rights, a person can seek a remedy under Article 32 directly approaching the Supreme Court, and under Article 226 directly approaching the High Court. So they are justiciable, and also Constitution guarantees them to every citizen of the country. That's why, due to these two important reasons, they are called as fundamental rights. So out of 7 rights, the right to property is put off. So now right to equality, it is dealt with under Articles 14 to 18. Right to freedom under Articles 19 to 22. Right against exploitation under Article 23 to 24. And right to freedom of religion under Articles 25 to 28. And cultural and educational rights under Articles 29 to 30. Right to constitutional remedies under Article 32. So this right of property, which was a fundamental right at the time of when constitution is framed, was removed from it in 44th constitutional amendment. So now the right to property is not a constitutional right or fundamental right, but it's a constitutional right and legal right. This was because this right was proved to be a hindrance towards attaining the goal of socialism and redistributing wealth, property equitably among the people. For understanding what is a right to property and why it was removed from the fundamental rights, one needs to understand Magna Carta and Articles 39 and 40 of Magna Carta. This is very important. Unless you understand that Roman culture, Roman law and Latin law, why we are following Latin principles, maximums in India, all those things, I request you all to read about Magna Carta principles and Articles 39 and 40 of the said constitution, not ours. Then from that you will understand how the right to property has developed as a constitutional right and why that right is removed as a fundamental right and now it is a constitutional and legal right. So now we will see right to equality. It deals with 14 to 18. It ensures equal opportunities in the government and ensures against discrimination by the state. Right to freedom of speech under Articles 19 to 22, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly without arms, freedom of association, freedom to practice and any profession, freedom to reside in any part of the country. Of course, there are certain conditions in order to protect the security, state security, public morality and defense, decency and friendly relations with foreign countries. So the state can impose some reasonable restrictions while anybody is claiming a right to freedom of speech. He also has to follow the restrictions which are imposed, which are reasonable by the state. Then right against exploitation under Article 23 to 24. That is, this right implies the prohibition of traffic in human beings, begar and other forms of forced labor, like children, prohibition of children working in factories, particularly the children below the 14 years in hazardous conditions. Then right to freedom of religion under Article 25 to 28. There is equal respect given to all religions in Indian polity. There is freedom of conscience, profession, practice and propagation of religion. The state has no official religion. Every person has the right to freely practice his or her faith, establish and maintain religious and charitable institutions. So the other day somebody asked about Uniform Civil Code. About that also I will explain today in after some time. So this Uniform Civil Code is connected to right to freedom of religion and Articles 25 to 28. Then we have cultural and educational rights under Articles 29 to 30. These rights protect the rights of religious, cultural and linguistic minorities by facilitating them to preserve their heritage and culture. Educational rights are for ensuring education for everyone without any discrimination. Then right to constitutional remedies. The Constitution guarantees remedies if citizens' fundamental rights are violated. The government cannot infringe upon or curb anyone's rights. When these rights are violated, the aggrieved party can approach the courts and, as I said, seek for the writ remedies for enforcing their rights, either by approaching the Honorable Supreme Court or by approaching the Honorable High Court. So what are the features of fundamental rights? These fundamentals rights are different to any ordinary legal rights in respect of the manner in which they are enforced. So if a legal right is violated, the aggrieved person cannot directly go to the Supreme Court or High Court. He has to approach the trial courts. As I stated earlier, there are trial courts at the district level, which are at the highest court is district court, and there are sub court below to it, and after below to that judicial magistrates courts, judicial junior civil judges courts. So depending upon the value of the property and the area of the area where that property is situated, you have to approach the trial courts, that they are called lower courts, for getting the remedy of violation for any legal right as per the jurisdiction, by approaching the court which is having jurisdiction. Whereas fundamental rights are concerned, bypassing the lower courts, you are entitled to directly approach the High Court and Supreme Court. This is the one of the important feature of fundamental rights. Some of the fundamental rights available to all citizens, while the rest are for all persons. Some rights are given to even citizens and foreigners. Fundamental rights are not absolute rights. This is another important. You can't say I have a right to speak. You can say that I have a right to freedom of speech. Then you can't say that when I have a right to freedom of speech and while speaking, you are under an obligation to hear me. Because there can be reasonable restrictions, which means they are subjected to conditions of state security, public morality and decency, and friendly relations with foreign countries. As I said, they are justiciable. As I said, of course, they can be amended, but basic structure of the Constitution cannot be amended. Fundamental rights can be suspended only during national emergency, but the rights guaranteed under Article 20 and 21 of the Constitution, they can't be suspended even during the emergency. Article 20, as I stated earlier, it deals with a person should be punished only once for the offense committed by him. He can't be or he should not be punished twice. This is Article 20. Article 21 deals with right to life and personal liberty. It says no person shall be deprived of his personal liberty or personal life without procedure established by law, or rather you can say that the due process of law has to be followed. The application of fundamental rights can be restricted in an area which has been placed under martial law or military rule. These are dealt with under Article 33 to 35. What are the exceptions and all that? What are the rights that are available only to citizens out of the fundamental rights and not to foreigners? Prohibition of discrimination on grounds of race, religion, caste, gender, or place of birth. This is under Article 15. And likewise, equality of opportunity in matters of public employment, Article 16. Protection to freedom of speech and expression, association, assembly, and residence, free movement, profession. These are all dealt with under Article 19. Then protection of culture, language, and script of minorities, which is dealt with under Article 29. Then under Article 30, rights of minorities to establish and administer educational institution under Article 30. You know very well some minority institutions, educational institutions are there, they are covered under Article 30. These 5 rights, you can say, they are there exclusively for citizens. The other fundamental rights, right to things, they are there even for foreigners also. So according to Article 13, which is very important, all laws that are violative of fundamental rights shall be void. Here there is an express provision for judicial review. The Supreme Court and High Courts can declare any law unconstitutional on the grounds that it is violative of fundamental rights. Article 13 talks about not just laws. It deals with about ordinances, orders, regulations, notification, etc. While dealing with under Article 13, we have to consider whether a particular organization or institution is or comes within the definition of state in order to see whether a fundamental right is violated by that institution or not. So under Article 13, while interpreting what is law, what is ordinance, what is orders, regulations or notifications, in order to know and understand and decide whether there is a violation of any provision, any article under fundamental rights, we have to see first whether that law or that ordinance or that regulation or notification is made by the state or not. Sometimes state, in order to see that it has no time or for the convenience, create some organizations. Whether that organization comes within the purview of the definition of the state or not. For this, the test is whether it is controlled and managed by the state. Sometimes states create some corporation, but it doesn't give any money. It has no control power. It has no management power. At that time, it is not state. At that time, if that particular corporation, though created under law, if it violates fundamental rights, you can't resort to court of law under Article 32 and 226 because it doesn't come within the definition of state. So first of all, we have to understand whether the law, regulation or orders or notifications are made by the state or not. If the state makes a law or ordinances or regulations, then only those laws or ordinances or regulations or notifications will be considered for the purpose of judicial review, whether they violate the fundamental rights or not. That's why Honorable Supreme Court Judge Krishna Iyer in one judgment, he said that one may look like a beautiful flower, but a serpent may be inside. That is to say, one organization, one institution, it looks as if it is not state. But inside it, under the statute that is under which it is established, serpent, that is state, may be inside. So we have to look into it, whether the particular organization is controlled and managed and fully financed by the state or not. This is the test to know what is law and whether the state that is under Article 12 state covers under it or not. As per the Constitution, Article 30, Clause 2, states that no laws can be made that take away fundamental rights. So the question is whether a constitutional amendment act can be termed as law or not. That we will consider during the course of time, but for the present, I will say about three important cases. One is Sajjan Singh case in 1965. The Honorable Supreme Court held that the Parliament can amend any part of the Constitution, including fundamental rights. In 1967, Supreme Court reversed its stance taken earlier when, in the verdict of Goloknath case, it said that the fundamental rights cannot be amended. Then in 1973, in the landmark judgment, Keswananda Bharati case, the Honorable Supreme Court held that although no part of the Constitution, including fundamental rights, was beyond the Parliament's amending purview, the basic structure of the Constitution could not be abrogated even by a constitutional amendment. To this extent, you can keep in mind. And while interpreting the articles or fundamental rights and to understand what is law and what is not law and what is the state under Article 12 and 13 or not, to understand it, we must understand the interpretation of the while dealing with, there are three principles. One is doctrine of severability. This is one principle which is very important to understand whether under Article 30, if a law violates, whether the entire law has to be struck down or only part of it has to be struck down. For this is a doctrine that protects the fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution. It is also known as the doctrine of severability. Under Article 13, according to which all laws that were enforced in India before the commencement of the Constitution, inconsistent with the provisions of fundamental rights, shall to the extent of that inconsistency be void. Suppose before making the Constitution, before the Constitution is framed, there is one law. After the Constitution is framed, that part of law or that law, it is violative of fundamental rights. Then how to implement it, whether the previous law has to be implemented or the present fundamental right has to be implemented. For this doctrine of severability is applicable to that extent which is in contravention of the present fundamental rights by defining, by understanding what was the law prior to the Constitution. To that extent, it is void. So you have to separate that part of that extent of the law which is violating the constitutional fundamental rights. Then that part is void and the rest of it can be implemented. So this principle is called doctrine of severability. Then another principle is doctrine of eclipse. It is something like doctrine of eclipse. So you know how we consider the eclipse. Suppose a fundamental right is there today. Tomorrow that fundamental right is removed. When that fundamental right is removed, the previous law, the law which was there prior to the making of Constitution, that will come into force. Right to property was a fundamental right. Then that is removed. After removal of the fundamental right, the previous law in respect of the right to property prior to the making of Constitution, that will come into force. That is called doctrine of eclipse. This implies that whenever the fundamental right is struck down, the law becomes active again. So the law revives. The previous law revives. That's called doctrine of eclipse. To know how many fundamental rights are there in the Indian Constitution is a must rule for any person who is going for Constitution. You are going for any competitive examinations. How many fundamental rights are there and what are those rights and how they are implemented and where, why and when right to property is removed and it is made as constitutional right and not fundamental right. Then the basic difference between human rights and fundamental right is the scope of acceptance. While fundamental rights have scope within a country, human rights are accepted worldwide. This right to life, even if Article 21 is not there, this is world over accepted. So right to life is a human right. It is accepted entire world. So under Article 21, we have made it as fundamental right. A human right is made as a fundamental right.